she informed me that I was lacking in interest. I winced as I sipped my beer. I am aware that some individuals claim that it is acceptable to shed tears while consuming beer. However, I was not crying. There was no reason for me to do so. I felt regretful, yet I did not believe that I should grieve the departure of a male partner. It is not a woman's responsibility to grieve when a male partner leaves. There is no reason to shed tears when you can find a new partner. Many women express frustration at being unable to find suitable male partners. They often claim that all the good ones are already in relationships or that they are gay. However, my former partner, it is frequently observed that women do not honor their commitments. Many men have experienced significant distress as a result of divorce. This suggests that there is a fundamental flaw in the way that people perceive the nature of their relationships. It is often overlooked that spending years with a partner allows one to gain a deep understanding of them. What caused me the greatest concern was not her desire for a change in her circumstances, but her characterization of me as dull. It appears that she may have deliberately sought to diminish my self-esteem in order to facilitate her departure. It is unfair that she has not formally terminated the relationship. She has merely stated her intention to pursue a relationship with another individual, citing my perceived lack of excitement as the reason for this decision. During my younger years, I had a keen interest in adventure activities. I engaged in kayaking with friends in various locations, including coastal and mountain streams. On one occasion, I paddled to Long Island, a journey that was initially deemed too risky by many. However, I proceeded with the trip and completed it without any significant issues. Additionally, I enjoyed camping on the beach. Furthermore, Karen disapproved of my participation in such activities, considering them to be excessive and unnecessary risks. In addition to this, I ceased engaging in various pursuits, including backcountry skiing, riding my motorcycle, driving my Triumph Spitfire, and engaging in scuba diving, mountain biking, and rock climbing. As a responsible father, I began skiing on well-groomed slopes. I maintained the slopes at a moderate gradient. I stored my dirt bike in a Triumph, swapped my mountain bike for a road bike, and joined a gym with a climbing wall. I drove a minivan with fake wood paneling. I loved my family and was therefore willing to accept these changes. Once she had regulated my hobbies, she began making demands about my job. She did not like it when I had to travel. Most of my trips were short, lasting just a day or two for business negotiations. Sometimes I had to go. I was adept at negotiating deals that resulted in either a successful acquisition or a profitable sale for my company. She was disinclined to approve international trips, which often lasted a couple of weeks, despite the attractive bonuses that accompanied them. These bonuses contributed to our financial stability. She disapproved of my becoming a partner, as it entailed a significant reduction in overnight travel. I was able to fly to most locations within the country, finalize the deal, and return. However, on a late-night flight, it took years to reduce the international trips. This was a dilemma: travel frequently, earn significant money, advance to senior partner status, train and oversee negotiating teams to close deals on your behalf, cut back on travel, let others take those trips and reap the rewards, or risk being left behind on the corporate ladder. I did not want to be left behind, so I strategized wisely and found ways to combine reasons for travel so that one trip could earn multiple accolades. In order to advance towards partnership, I was the first in my company to embrace teleconferencing for groundwork. I ensured that my teams were chartered on small jets in order to maximize our time on the ground. This resulted in a reduction in my bonuses, but it was a worthwhile sacrifice. I was able to climb the corporate ladder, and Karen was happier, but I was still bored. I gave up everything to match her priorities, and now I am unfulfilled. I allowed her to pursue her interests, but I am left with a sense of lack of purpose. In contrast, I am reverting to the former self I once enjoyed. I am returning to the individual who derived immense pleasure from pursuing his own interests, the person who defied gravity by traversing a muddy slope during motocross weekends, the individual who boarded a helicopter to locate fresh snow on remote slopes that required an entire day to descend, and the person who returned to those slopes in summer and scaled the heights once more. She urged me to remain at home and await her return, emphasizing the importance of safety. However, I was expected to be prepared to provide assistance. If she encountered difficulties on her date, I was to be the one to assist her. After 25 years of marriage, 4 years of post-secondary education, and numerous years of friendship and dating, I had assumed that she was intelligent. However, it became evident that this was not the case, and I was not willing to accept such a lack of responsibility. I was not going to be available to her, either as a source of assistance or as a waiting presence upon her return. This was a disappointing turn of events, as it meant that all of the promises and vows we had made to each other were no longer valid. The commitment to love, honor, cherish, and obey was no longer applicable. She rejected the last of these, and as a result, our relationship has now reached an impasse. I understand now why doll would not matter if obey were part of it. Therefore, I returned home from work, changed into jeans and a sports shirt while she was in the shower, and began searching for my old boots. She had always liked me in boots, whether riding boots, hiking boots, western boots, or dress boots. It did not matter, but they all disappeared when I began to prioritize safety. I have since been redefined, and I recognize that I still look good in those boots, even though I have gained some weight. Over the course of the preceding 25 years, I had developed a certain degree of muscularity in my upper body. Consequently, I was aware that my appearance would be enhanced by the addition of a pair of boots. I had also acquired a more pronounced chest and shoulders, a touch of aftershave, and a sharp sports jacket. There was no question that I was not going to wait around for her. She was not pleased. I was not interested in engaging in trivial conversation. I was out the door before she could respond. As I headed towards my weekend, the minivan started smoothly. Its large 4-cylinder engine was in good working order. The cylinder engine began to function, although it emitted a coughing sound. It was evident that the minivan was not operating smoothly. Nevertheless, it had already traversed the driveway and was heading towards town before Karen had even had the opportunity to dress. I observed her hurry with a sense of amusement. She exited the front door in her robe, and it was not long before my phone rang. I chose to ignore it, allowing it to go to voicemail. I had set up a new message for this occasion. Hey, it's Dale. I am currently unavailable to answer your call as I am either occupied with driving or experiencing a relatively uneventful period. If you are seeking a more stimulating interaction, I would be happy to oblige. Should you wish to discuss the matter further, you are invited to contact my wife, Karen, on 555-269. Alternatively, you may leave a message and I shall respond at the earliest opportunity, although I must advise you that this may not be until Monday. I would like to take this opportunity to suggest that you consider replacing your current vehicle with a more suitable one. I was no longer content with driving a van with imitation wood paneling. I required a vehicle that was robust yet elegant. I would even be satisfied with genuine wooden siding, similar to that seen on an older model Willys wagon. I recall how impressive it looked with a surfboard on top. However, I was unable to locate an appropriate match or an old Willy Woody. I now enjoy riding it, now that I am no longer constrained by the previous, uninspiring vehicle. It is a positive feeling to say that, given my circumstances in the past, selecting a vehicle that was both sophisticated and durable would have signified a rejection of my previous, uninspiring self. I would have simply placed the checkbook from our savings account back into the safe and returned home. I was determined not to return to my previous circumstances. Consequently, I purchased both a robust vehicle and one that exuded luxury. The Mercedes dealership assisted me in making this purchase. With a sleek convertible, I was able to project a sophisticated image. I felt that nothing could be more impressive than a man driving a Mercedes convertible and knowing how to say very fancy in French. I acknowledge that I may have missed the nuances of the language, but I am no longer concerned with maintaining a certain level of social status. I am no longer interested in pursuing a lifestyle that would have been, in this context, perceived as boring. Additionally, the dealership had a Jeep in their used vehicle inventory that was equipped with a variety of enhancements, including robust lifters, durable tires, bright fog lights, and a prominent train horn. I proceeded to take possession of the Jeep while the convertible was delivered to my residence and stationed in the driveway on Sunday morning. I recall remarking that the previous experience was rather uneventful. I was never boring. The version of me that she created was, in her opinion, a complete turn-off. That individual was effectively erased from my life while I began to seek out my first experience of adrenaline. I purchased a trailer and set off for home, not to the house that I shared with my wife, but to my mother's residence. I had not seen my mother in a considerable period of time, so it was time for a visit. The hour-long drive was an enjoyable experience as I became accustomed to driving a vehicle with greater power. My mother was delighted and had prepared my favorite lasagna. She did not inquire about my reasons for being there or why Karen was not present, but she was aware that something was amiss. The following morning, I proceeded to the shed and retrieved my old Spitfire, which I had kept there for many years. My brother had occasionally driven it to maintain it. While the dirt bike was still in relatively good condition, it was not so fortunate in other respects. However, there was no need for me to start it in order to load it onto the trailer, and by lunchtime I had both the bike and the car on my trailer. My mother was smiling, so I decided to tell her the story. I grinned and told her about my experiences of the last 25 years, during which time I had lived a very different life to hers. I had been riding around in minivans and taking on beginner slopes, while she had been raising 3 children. Then, suddenly, I showed up without her daughter. I was driving a large vehicle, requesting the return of my sports car and motorcycle and wearing boots that I had previously described as snazzy. As I had previously stated, my mother was able to discern my thoughts. I informed her of Karen's recent psychological challenges. While her behavior might be erratic, I suggested that she was, in fact, beneficial to me. My mother had previously asserted that Karen had been advantageous to me, and that evening, I activated my phone, which had been receiving numerous calls from Karen and the children. In a group chat with the children, I replied, "I am fine. I am currently at my grandmother's house. My mother and I are currently experiencing a disagreement, so I require some time to reflect. My mother is extremely distressed, claiming that you are missing and is unaware of the reason. I am not going to provide an explanation. It is not my place to do so. I will simply state that my mother believes I am boring and is taking action to address this. She can inform you of her current activities. My mother is not acting in a manner that is consistent with her usual behavior. I have always been aware of the need to exercise caution, given the possibility that she might act in a way that could harm you or our family. It would be beneficial for you to return home and address the situation. I appreciate your trust, but before you make any assumptions, I suggest you speak with your mother. We are not attempting to place blame. Our objective is to ensure the well-being of both of you. Thank you for your understanding. I would appreciate it if you could inform me when you have spoken with your mother. I spent the evening at my mother's residence, enjoying a light-hearted film, and was preparing to retire for the night when I received your message." Tone went off. "Jenny. I am sorry. I am unable to comprehend why your mother has chosen to pursue a romantic interest outside of our family. Jenny. I am aware of your feelings on this matter. I will continue to live my life as I have been, without concerning myself with your mother's rules. If they were truly important to her, she would have adhered to the marital agreement we both made. Jenny. I have been set free from these constraints. I will live my life as I see fit. Daniel. I understand your feelings. Give Grandma a kiss for me when I return. I am planning to ride in the Spitfire next weekend. You may recall that I have a reputation for such activities, and I am aware that you are aware of it. Indeed, I am expecting a ski trip for spring break somewhere with a helicopter instead of a T-bar. I am aware that my children know the things I used to do and what I really love. They have seen photos of me skiing and covered in mud from motocross. I am aware of this and I am prepared to accept it. My mother and I have had our disagreements, but we have also had our moments of shared adventure. My preferred establishment for bagels is a local eatery that I frequent on Sunday mornings. On this particular Sunday, I remained at home to assist with various domestic tasks, including lunch preparations. During this time, I received a text message from Karen. It was a rather irate communication, expressing her frustration at the situation. It transpired that the Mercedes, which Karen had ordered, had been delivered, but the keys had been left inside the vehicle. This was due to the fact that I had the spare keys. Consequently, Karen was unable to use her car, which was parked in the garage. I felt that the delivery team should be compensated for this inconvenience. I proceeded to return home, where I discovered Karen's vehicle. I parked it in the driveway. The Jeep in my driveway departed, laughing, with my mini CDS and drove off. Now, Karen could see my new Jeep with its trailer carrying her two enemies, my Spitfire and my Kawasaki. This prompted me to consider the situation. At least her side of the garage was clear and she could leave. I did not return home. Instead, I went to the mall to buy enough clothes for a few days and then checked into a nearby hotel. I proceeded to a hotel situated in close proximity to my place of work. I had reserved the penthouse suite. I had not accumulated all those bonuses over the years without reason. I slept soundly the following day. I went to work as usual and informed my team that I would be joining the next trip, a visit to Hong Kong involving 160 acres of prime industrial property. Negotiations had encountered an obstacle, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity. In order to assert some authority, it was necessary to present the team with 3 potential acquisitions for their consideration. There was no reason to delay. When the initial findings were presented, it was essential to inform the team that a decision would be made shortly regarding the purchase of one or more of the sites. It was also necessary to inform the legal team that the decision would be made and that they should be prepared to handle the subsequent paperwork. It is recommended that the paperwork pack be completed at least 1 month in advance. Should this not be feasible, it would be advisable to collaborate with members of Ian's team. There is no objection to family members visiting at least once during the period of absence. It is not the intention to cause any marital difficulties as a result of this initiative. Indeed, the costs of accommodation and travel for spouses and partners to join their respective partners for the duration of their visit will be borne by the employer. I would like to suggest that we embark on a period of sightseeing, during which I would like to see you all motivated, focused and productive. I am planning to visit Sydney about that hotel group in Buenos Aires before we return. I am sending Ian to Seoul in Mumbai while we are in Hong Kong. We have a fantastic opportunity to make substantial profits here. I am glad to have you back, team. I would also like to announce that Carter Douglas will be my successor as a top-the-notch negotiator. Smiled at me. I smiled back and pulled out my favorite numbers. Enthusiast, may I have a word with you? I escorted her to my office and instructed my secretary to hold my calls, especially from my wife. She nodded and I closed the door with Kim and me inside. This is your big opportunity, Kim. We need to move quickly and with no room for mistakes. The majority of purchases will be sold immediately upon returning home. It is essential that each transaction is conducted smoothly and efficiently. While some purchases may not be ideal, we will attract sellers with items we desire, allowing us to trade some items to obtain others. Additionally, we will explore new markets for some of our product lines. While these will not provide immediate benefits, they will lead to long-term profits. The objective is to generate long-term profits that will impress our partners, who will elevate you from a junior associate to a more lucrative position. This is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your capabilities. I require your availability 24/7 so that you can support any argument or claim I make before and during negotiations. What does 24/7 mean? Kim asked. Karen's dating other men prompted the question of whether this meant that she could sleep her way to a partnership. It was made clear that no betrayal from a woman was too many. As with everyone else, she would have to earn her way up. She was known to be incredibly attractive, slim and graceful, and to have legs that curved. Her attractive physique was constantly on display in her revealing outfits, which served to remind everyone of her alluring and soft curves. However, as she was my employee, I was unable to pursue any further contact. Nevertheless, I would require her assistance for my business needs during this trip. I would like her to pick me up in a limousine on Friday. The morning dress should be as provocative as possible, even if I am not. It is my intention that my wife should worry that I am involved with you when you arrive. You should come to my door to fetch me when you book the limo. Request Jan as the driver and tell her to wear the uniform with the short shorts. It is my desire that my wife should be insanely jealous when I departed, leaving my team eager for my return, my wife anxious to see me, and my children angry with my wife. Kim was eager, not necessarily for me, but for a promotion, or perhaps a bit for me too, but I had set boundaries. I proceeded to the airport to rent a plane, considering skydiving, but ultimately decided against it. I had to acknowledge that I was capable of inflicting harm upon myself if I desired to rekindle the excitement I had previously experienced as a thrill seeker. I was compelled to take action and seek out some form of stimulation. The experience was exhilarating, and I documented it with the help of rented cameras, which I used to capture the stunt with my jump partner. I shared the footage on Facebook and enjoyed a restful night's sleep the following day. However, my phone soon buzzed with notifications. Missed calls and texts from the children indicated that Karen had reached out to express her feelings. She conveyed that she felt I was no longer engaging with her and that I was no longer the person she knew and loved. She described me as boring and uninteresting. I did not feel inclined to see Karen, so while she was at work, I quietly slipped home and packed my belongings. I then proceeded to the airport and caught a late flight to Chicago. There was a compelling reason to depart, yet I had prospective opportunities on the horizon. It transpired that the following days were financially advantageous, and I was thus absent from Karen's company until the imminent excursion. I arrived considerably late on Thursday night, and the house was in darkness. She was unaware of my presence until she finally returned at 2 a.m. Fortunately, she was alone, as otherwise I would have had to address the issue of her bringing her young men into our home. However, this afforded me the opportunity to avoid seeing her until I was ready to do so. When I felt energized, I woke up early, packed my refreshed luggage and placed it by the door. I made myself a hearty breakfast of steak and eggs with ZZYZX playing on the stereo in the kitchen. I wore a perfectly fitting pair of casual slacks and a stylish new sports shirt that Karen hadn't seen before. Dressy yet comfortable seemed ideal for the 18-hour journey to Asia. After an hour-long journey to Asia, I ensured that I presented myself in an aesthetically pleasing manner. Karen descended the staircase, attracted by the aroma of coffee, which was my specialty. Hers, however, was always of a lesser quality. "Dale, you're home. Why didn't you answer my calls?" An adequate rationale was provided last week. It was made clear that you intended to act according to your own volition, and I was unable to prevent you from doing so. Consequently, I reasoned that if my wife was going to pursue her own interests, I might as well do the same. If this is the new reality, I am willing to accept it. It was never my intention to give you carte blanche to do whatever you wished. I merely stated that I was going to engage in relationships with other men. Karen then clarified, "Okay, I understand, but that is not what I wanted. Therefore, given that you have made such a significant decision against my wishes, I see no reason for me to consult you on mine. There is, however, a reason why you should consider your family. A husband and father should not be gallivanting around on a motorcycle or racing little sports cars. We settled this years ago, but circumstances have changed." Karen reasoned that we had settled it, but we have also grown older. Dale began, "I gave up all I have provided for you and the children in other ways. I have driven a minivan, skied on bunny slopes and had not jumped out of an airplane for years until this week when you stated that I was boring. This is because I was bored. Now that the children are grown, they have substantial college funds. It is noteworthy that neither you nor they are aware of this. Each child has a trust fund that will mature when they graduate from college. They have sufficient funds to pursue graduate studies. Furthermore, I have made a down payment on a house in a location that will be convenient for them. It is important to acknowledge that the children will be able to cope with any eventuality regarding my situation. I am aware that I am not the only person who will be affected by my demise. Consequently, if the chute does not open and I die doing something that could be considered awesome, I will die with a smile on my face and they will be fine. Additionally, I have a stake in your future, Karen. I regret to inform you that I do not believe that Dale will be ideal." Dale continued, "Just hold on. Dale, that is a significant assumption. We have only recently begun to examine this matter, and you are already forming such a conclusion." Karen protested, "I am aware of this. I know I am not as important to you as I once was. If I were, you would never have given me that ultimatum. You think I am uninteresting. I am willing to relinquish this belief. I have many enjoyable experiences ahead of me. I have given up much in the name of being a family man, but the role of a family man is not as stimulating as..." To prevent his wife from resting her head on someone else's pillow, the doorbell rang at an opportune moment, allowing me to extricate myself from another round of this absurd conversation. Jen and Kim entered together, accompanied by 4 individuals displaying the most attractive physiques I had ever observed. I was particularly pleased with my appearance in gabardine, which I felt was particularly flattering. Jen greeted me warmly with a hug. Subsequently, she kissed me and proceeded to examine my 4 suitcases, which were transported to the waiting limousine. While Kim was providing me with updates on the progress of our negotiations, including details regarding financial matters and project specifics, Karen's attention was immediately captured by Hong Kong, Sydney, and Buenos Aires. She inquired about the duration of my planned absence, requesting that it be a minimum of a couple of months. I anticipate that you will have sufficient time to explore before you reach an age where this is no longer feasible. However, I would request that you do not allow them into the house. In response, Karen presented a series of arguments, each more compelling than the last, in favor of my remaining and discussing the evolution of our relationship and our future prospects. However, I interrupted her and stated that this was not the appropriate course of action. The relationship is no longer viable, it has reached a point of irremediable deterioration. I will not be in contact for several weeks. As we proceeded to the vehicle, I was unable to comprehend her monologue, but I did respond with a smile when she observed the array of automobiles in front of the garage, including the one where her vehicle was concealed. However, the exact wording of her remark was too crude for me to repeat, even in this context. Hong Kong was an amazing place to visit. Kim stayed in the suite next to mine, so she was always nearby, but strictly in a professional capacity, as we had agreed. She was particularly adept at handling financial matters, and together we successfully closed all the expected deals and lined up others for follow-up. The next stage of the project was to finalize the UP teams in a month. Additionally, significant progress was made in Australia, where an agreement in principle was reached to acquire an entire hotel group. A team would return in a month to finalize the deal. Further acquisitions were explored, and the focus shifted to Argentina. A deal was struck with a motivated seller, and the team identified other potential projects for the corporate portfolio. Throughout this period, I remained faithful to my marriage vows, hoping beyond hope to return home to a Karen eager to reconcile. While Karen might have lost her composure somewhat, I still retained affection for that impetuous woman. I was not yet prepared to terminate the marriage. Instead, I interpreted her ultimatum as permission for an open marriage. We would remain married but could engage in extramarital relationships. This was an acceptable compromise. Carrie Moore, an old college friend who had become a high-end purchaser for affluent tourists in Hong Kong, demonstrated the local area to my team, including visits to the renowned markets, prior to the conclusion of our 12-day stay. She subsequently recommended a highly regarded tailor, and I departed for Sydney with a number of bespoke suits. I had suits made and spent the nights engaged in unrestrained passion with her. It was precisely what I needed: a trusted partner, a posh hotel suite in an exotic city, and a passionate encounter. I experienced a pang of guilt for approximately 10 minutes, until I recalled that Karen was the one who set these rules. She had previously described me as boring, but I realized that I had never been boring. I had, however, been. Carrie was not a dull individual, as evidenced by her enthusiastic response to our intimate encounters. When we relocated from Hong Kong to Sydney, we engaged the services of a local tour guide named Sydney. During the day, we explored the city's attractions, and at night, we spent time with the attractive brunette. This afforded me a double dose of pleasure. I am not merely reiterating this sentiment, it is a genuine observation. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Sydney. Ria was an ideal location for business activities. While our performance was not as strong as in Asia or Australia, it was sufficient to justify extending our stay by another month. On a related note, I had the opportunity to interact with a passionate Latin divorcee who provided me with invaluable insights into the art of tango, both on and off the dance floor, as we concluded our negotiations. I sent my team back individually on first-class commercial flights. A couple of days later, I boarded a leased jet where the flight attendants welcomed me into the Mile High Club and taught me the ropes of a threesome. It was quite the trip, but I was not yet ready to call it quits. Before heading home, I treated my Tongan companions to a skiing trip in Canada was undertaken with my children before Christmas. They had completed their final examinations a week ahead of schedule, affording us the opportunity to enjoy some excellent skiing on challenging slopes accessible only by helicopter at night. I socialized with my children and also spent time with a curvaceous blonde housewife I had met at a bar. She shared her experiences of being after trading in her current partner for a younger model. She was experiencing feelings of loss and uncertainty. I offered her a position as my personal assistant after our third night together. I proposed a generous housing allowance and offered to cover her moving expenses. Each night, she reached her climax in a different language. When she switched to Russian on the third night, I realized that she was. Her multilingual abilities would be an invaluable asset to our growing international ventures team. Hiring her meant that I would no longer engage in sexual relations with her solely because my unfaithful wife had disregarded our marriage vows. However, this did not signify that I would abandon my ethical standards or that I would cease my business activities. Consequently, we flew back home a few days before Christmas and the children went to stay with their mother. While I checked into a hotel near my place of work, dealing with Karen and jet lag simultaneously was not on my agenda. However, I did treat myself to a condominium as a Christmas gift. When I arrived home, my cars were still parked in front of the garage. Surprisingly, there was a Mini Cooper convertible next to my Spitfire. I expected Karen to be upset, but she greeted me as if nothing had happened. Perhaps I was no longer perceived as boring by her. I participated in Christmas festivities, enjoying her cooking and helping with chores. After parking the Mercedes and the Spitfire in the garage, I left in my Jeep. The phone rang. I hoped for a Christmas truce and was fortunate to experience one. She suggested I stay for a couple of days for the children's sake, so I did. I slept. In the guest room the day after Christmas, I took each car to be washed, leaving them exposed to the weather for 4 months. This may not have been the optimal decision for their condition, but it served as a constant reminder to Karen that circumstances had changed. My intention was to park the Spitfire in the garage and to garage both the Jeep and the Mercedes at the condo. On the day following Christmas, Karen resumed her attacks. Her boyfriend joined us for lunch, and she grinned triumphantly. I retreated upstairs, grabbed my bag, and prepared for battle. The children were enraged with Karen, catching her off guard. She probably expected a different outcome. However, it was Christmas and I interrupted their confrontation to bid farewell. They chose to, instead of saying goodbye to Karen, we packed their bags into the Jeep and drove downtown. There was plenty to keep us entertained in the city for New Year's, and we were determined to enjoy ourselves. We explored museums during the day and frequented clubs at night. Both children had friends nearby, so we alternated between hanging out together and breaking away. I also, despite the presence of others, I was able to find moments of solitude. By the time I returned to work, I had had sufficient exposure to a variety of experiences, including music, museums, fine cuisine, and wine and whiskey. I had also achieved a level of success in the Southern Hemisphere that autumn, which had elevated my standing within the company. My status within the company attracted the attention of our competitors. I began receiving offers from other firms impressed by our sudden display of strength. I did not keep this information from my team. In fact, I assured them that if I decided to leave, I would bring them along. News of the developing situation reached the senior partners, prompting I was summoned to the office of the company's founder, Karen's grandfather. Under her father's leadership, the company had grown into a diversified conglomerate encompassing various manufacturing ventures. I joined the company at the same time as I married Karen, starting as a junior analyst, a role aligned with my academic background. I was afforded special treatment and even signed a prenuptial agreement to relinquish any claims to Karen's future inheritance of the company, which remained largely under her father's control. While I maintained a cordial relationship with Mr. Adams, our interactions were not overly familiar. He preferred to maintain a professional distance from his employees, including his son. Initially, I found this approach peculiar, but as I progressed within the company, I recognized its effectiveness in preventing favoritism and adopted a similar approach. Consequently, I abstained from engaging in personal relationships with colleagues, such as sleeping with Kim or socializing through activities like golf and business. I adhered to a strict code of conduct, therefore, it came as no surprise when Adams got straight to the point during our meeting. At this juncture, I must address the recent changes in your personal life. While your work performance has been commendable, you have encountered challenges with my daughter. Should I be concerned? Mr. Adams inquired, his tone serious yet concerned. I settled back into the comfort of the small chair positioned in front of his desk. Indeed, you should be concerned, sir, despite my 25-year tenure with this firm. Despite my lengthy tenure with this firm, I remain at the junior partner level. Over the past 5 years, I have generated more business than any other manager. My recent business endeavors in Asia were unparalleled. Consequently, my earned bonus surpassed that of any other employee, including your divisional presidents. Nevertheless, I find myself without the promotion I have worked hard for. I have worked hard for this promotion, and therefore I am contemplating accepting the standard severance package and seeking opportunities elsewhere. I explained my tone was a mixture of frustration and resolve. Mr. Adams leaned forward, his expression showing a mix of hesitation and understanding. Dale, I can't promote you like anyone else. You're my son. In law, how would that appear? He inquired, evidently torn between the familial relationship and professional responsibilities. I responded with conviction, stating that I was aware of the delicate nature of our situation, Mr. Adams, but that business is business. This entails accepting an offer that reflects one's ability and contributions. I could become a full partner tomorrow at Woodford Unlimited or Mark Manufacturing. I am seeking loyalty, not just as your son-in-law. I then proceeded to elucidate the significance of meritocracy over familial ties, invoking the tenets of the law. Mr. Adams, in response, exhibited a visible change in demeanor, his countenance softening. I perceive your perspective, Dale. I recognize that I may have been excessively cautious, striving to avoid the appearance of favoritism at the expense of recognizing your achievements. Let us discuss a way forward that acknowledges your contributions without compromising our principles. He proposed opening the door to a constructive dialogue, grateful for the shift in his approach. I nodded, thanking him. In fact, I had defended my thesis for my PhD in economics last. I inquired as to whether I might offer a gentle correction, seeking the professional respect that my efforts had earned. Very well, Dr. Carter. I am aware of my daughter's actions and I am not pleased. We have spoken at length and at the very least, she is not speaking to me. Mr. Adams conceded, my philosophy is inadequate and your philosophy is superior. Your approach to loyalty is incongruous with the prevailing norms of the business world. Your strategy of compartmentalizing your personal and professional relationships is an ineffective and unproductive method of managing a workforce that perceives you as an aloof and unemotional leader. Is it prudent to undervalue the contributions of your top producer on the basis of your personal relationship with me? In conclusion, in light of the circumstances, I believe there is little reason to remain with the current firm. I made it clear to the individual in question that I would be pursuing opportunities elsewhere. In response, he challenged me to demonstrate my full capabilities. I did so by the end of the workday, resulting in the resignation of my entire team and Ian and his team as well. The speed with which he backtracked was notable. I was subsequently promoted to senior partnership with a substantial raise. Furthermore, both our teams received salary increases. Additionally, a mergers and acquisitions division was established for us, with my professional and financial futures secured. I then shifted my focus to my personal life, engaging in various outdoor activities, including mountain biking and dirt biking, as well as competing in motocross races. I also participated in downhill mountain biking, which resulted in me being covered in mud, which some female bikers found appealing. One of them, a Harley enthusiast, expressed admiration for my motocross style and even suggested that I contact her when I upgraded to a larger bike. I made a joking comparison between the capabilities of my vehicle and those of her Harley, noting that what was between my legs would require more than 2 wheels. As I loaded my bike onto the trailer behind my beach cruiser, she loaded her Harley onto the same trailer. We spent the night discussing the advantages of agility versus raw power. In detailed, impassioned discussions, I compared my motorcycle with hers. I also engaged in skiing with great enthusiasm, conquering challenging slopes such as Tuckerman's and seeking out glacier in the Pyrenees that offered a rush of adrenaline. When the summer heat closed the slopes on Mount Washington, it was interesting to observe women sunbathing in just their swimsuits at a lodge situated high up in the mountains, right next to a snowy slope. It is even more entertaining when they decide to shed the rest of their clothes later in your hotel room. I had completed enough tandem jumps from a perfectly safe airplane to qualify for solo jumps, so I did just that. The same instructor provided me with sufficient training hours and a sailplane for solo flight. It was an exciting time for her to have a student achieve both milestones in the same month. Furthermore, she participated in a naked jump and practice session on a deserted beach where we landed. However, due to the seating arrangement of the sailplane, we were unable to replicate this experience. Consequently, we returned to the beach for another round. The initial experience was thrilling, and therefore, a second attempt was made. I shared these experiences on Facebook, and my page received numerous comments from friends. Furthermore, her family, particularly her children, exhibited a similar distance from her. She attempted to confront me, but I evaded her, making it impossible for her to corner me like she could with someone less assertive. I ignored her attempts. My phone continued to ring after each post, but I chose not to respond. She even tried to confront me at work, enlisting her father's help to summon me for a talk. He did not attempt that again after I threatened to switch companies. He had to intervene to prevent her from accosting me further. Some people's offspring, I tell you, then came the intense persuasion. Relatives, pets and even acquaintances were all urging me to give her another chance. They argued that everyone makes mistakes. In response, I asked them to imagine being in my situation. I instructed the women to undress and prepare for intimacy, reasoning that if forgiveness was that easy, I could make my own errors too, starting with someone who understood forgiveness. Likewise, I urged the men to bring their partners or family members for the same purpose. Some were taken aback, but they grasped my point. Perhaps some would never speak to me again, but that was not necessarily a negative outcome. I was tired of I chose to decline the unsolicited advice and continued my journey with my team, who were eager to embark on another venture following our successful endeavors in Asia and Argentina. This time, our sights were set on Brazil and Argentina, after which we planned to return to Hong Kong. Our efforts were met with success and we leased space and established the firm's inaugural international office in Asia. Karen's father did not object to this decision. In consequence of our success, a continued presence was deemed appropriate, resulting in my appointment as Vice President for Operations in the Southern Hemisphere. Ian was stationed in Argentina and Kim in Australia, with the result that our division's business flourished. I remained away from home, while Karen expressed a desire to join me. However, the children convinced her otherwise. I was reluctant for her to be present, and she eventually came to accept this. I returned the Spitfire and the motorcycle to my mother. I gave my son the Jeep and my daughter the Mercedes. I granted Karen a divorce and gave Carrie an engagement ring. I had no intention of spending the prime of my life alone. I desired a good woman by my side, and she enjoys skydiving. I obtained everything I wanted: adventure, a happy household, a fresh beginning, my dignity, and a great deal of money. Fortune would have been made in my new part of the world had Karen approached me and suggested that, as she was bored, we find something new and exciting to do together. I would have been delighted. We could have skied together, and I would have been pleased to teach her and share those experiences. We could have traveled, rafted, river safely, or ziplined through Cambodia with little risk and lots of excitement. I would have been willing to do anything for her until she left me for someone else. I found that difficult to accept. I have been informed that she is unhappy with the dating scene and that she is dissatisfied with the men she encounters. She is envious of her father's admiration for me and the financial benefits I have brought to his company. She regrets her actions but is aware that there is no going back. Carrie ensures that every time she boards a helicopter, in ski boots, she fastens a parachute, but my ultimate thrill is going to bed with her every night. There is nothing Carrie will not try in bed, and she enjoys everything we do together. I am aware of this because once we try something, she wants to do it again. This never happened with Karen. Even in our younger days, when things were good, we have not spoken since the day her father had to hold her back so that I could leave. She may wish to converse further, but she is aware that I have little desire to rekindle our relationship. At some point in the future, one of her children may marry or have a child, and I will feel obliged to attend. Karen will likely be present, and I will have to interact with her, but I am not concerned about that eventuality. Carrie will be by my side, not to shield me but to ensure that I am not lacking in stimulation or bored.